Great. So hello and welcome to another Viewpoints. For those who are new tuning in, Viewpoints is the virtual podcast where we talk to the entrepreneurs, investors and creators who are building the next category of defining companies in XR and spatial computing. Very excited for this episode. We're here inside the Engage platform in this wonderful Oxford University library. And I'm joined by Petri, my co-host, and also by EQT and Varjo. So let's dive into some introductions.
Okay. Hey guys, great to see you. So I'm Uhro Konttori. I'm one of the founders at Varjo, and Varjo is of course known for being at the forefront of VR and mixed reality technology development, making world's best VR and mixed reality headsets. And now, of course, very recently we just announced our Varjo Reality Cloud, which is our move towards not only engaging on the hardware side, but very much a software platform enabling people to teleport to the other side of the world and have a fully immersive, equal to being physically present experience live.
Awesome. I think we're going to dive into that a bit later on. Ted, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. And for the people noticing my very stiff and robotic body movements, my VR headset, I think it broke. I don't know. Uhro, you got to send me one of your Varjo headsets because my Oculus Quest 2 broke. My name is Ted. I'm a partner at EQT Ventures, which is one of the larger venture platforms coming out of Europe. Big VR enthusiast since sort of the DK1 days, also an investor in Varjo.
Petri, over to you to introduce yourself and maybe kick us off with some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone. Petri from Finland. I've been investing in the XR space for the past years and been honored and happy to follow the story of Varjo since pretty much the very early days, and really excited to have you here, Urho, and Ted, you as well. And so why don't we dive right into it? And Urho, you already mentioned a little bit what you're doing, but why don't you give us a bit of a background into how Varjo got started and what kind of progress you've had so far, and maybe you can illustrate that with a couple of use cases also.
Of course, we founded Varjo totally accidentally, so that's how many good things start. So me and my co-founder Nico Aiden, we had been let go from Microsoft. They discontinued operations in Finland. We were on our first summer vacation ever in multiple years, totally enjoying our lives, and ended up looking a little bit into the startup scene. So we're discussing with a couple of founders on their problems, discussing with a couple of investors how it could help some of their investments to reach out to companies like Microsoft and Nokia and utilize our connections that we had to help these guys win a couple of bigger deals. So as one of these companies, we were working with Umbra. Umbra is a Finnish 3D rendering technology company, and they are basically enabling most of the AAA games to run at the solid 60 FPS rates on all of the consoles and optimizing really the rendering in there. Umbra, by the way, means shadow in Finnish, and Varjo means shadow in Finnish. So that's where we started discussing with them that they should really reach out to HoloLens, and we knew Kipman directly well, and had a plan how they would be able to sell their technology to the Microsoft team for AR exclusivity. And we had a fantastic vision how they need to do that one. And then we started looking into how do we do it in practice? How does it work with the HoloLens in practice? And ended up with the conclusion that you cannot reach out the kind of things we want to do on the demo, which were basically to have a board meeting table filled with the whole city of Chicago, I believe. They had a model of that one all the way to 3D level, seeing people walking dogs on the streets of Chicago. So the plan was that with their tech, they can make it run on HoloLens in full frame rate. And when you look at it from a distance, you see the whole city there at your feet. And then when you dig down, you start looking deeper and closer, you see those people walking their dogs. You see all of the detail, all that possible on a mobile headset. And it's this is going to be the best. And then the reality struck us that if you have a HoloLens or any kind of AR device, you have certain problems that make it so that you cannot look close to objects on a like table. And HoloLens, for example, shuts down the displays at 40 centimeters proximity to any object. So that won't work. And then like being able to see the city on over the whole board table really doesn't work when you have like a postcard sized area that you can actually enhance. They would need to go to like a other room to look at the table on that postcard sized area. So really didn't seem to be working. And we threw a bet that we could do a VR headset that has cameras where you could actually make that happen in 2 days. And that, of course, turned out into viciously long 2 days. But at 2 days mark, we were showing them an Oculus Rift 1 with 2 high-speed cameras fitted in front of it, with Unity software that had planets floating in the air that felt completely real because they were done with the video see-through technology. They felt solid. They felt like they were actually part of the world. And lo and behold, the CEO tells us that, wow, do you guys realize that this is the future of mixed reality? And could you do us a favor and show this to our investors so that they also get it? So like 2 days later, we're sitting in a similar conversation as we're having now in Lifeline Ventures office. Lifeline is like the most prestigious VC investor in Finland, and they're behind Supercell and many other good investments like Vault. So we are showing the same tech basically to these guys and saying that, we do think this is the future of mixed reality as well as VR, because it's going to be like all of the devices will have features like this soon. And then they go like, so how much guys do you need? How much money do you need? We're like, for what? For the company? We're like, oh, hold on, we're not forming a company. We're just like having fun. And they told us that, no, you absolutely need to form a company. Nobody has ever seen something like this before. And could you guys have the team up in a week's time? And so again, how much do you want? We had just been thinking of some totally different hardware company idea. So we had a number that, it takes minimum 1 million to get a hardware company started, like absolute minimum. And they were like, that shouldn't be a problem. So that's done. So can you have the team next week, pretty please? And this was almost to the date 5 years ago. Actually, to the date 5 years ago. It was on eve of midsummer. So a week later, we had a full founding team, and then a couple of months later, we had money on the bank account, rental done, and we kicked off Varjo. So that was basically the foundation of the company, a total accident for sure.
A great founding story. I'm curious to know, and I want to come back to Varjo and the uses of Varjo, but Ted, maybe now is a good time to bring you in. So you weren't one of the original investors, you weren't investing alongside Lifeline. When did EQT come across the company, and at what stage did you invest, and what inspired you to make the investment?
So it's interesting, now when Uhro is talking about this, I realized that we invested exactly 1 year later, must have been, because the investment committee presentation was actually on Midsummer Eve. I remember that because Uhro, you were on vacation somewhere, and then we some of the colleagues not based in Sweden were like, we just got to meet these guys. So we did a presentation on Midsummer Eve with Timo and you, Urho. So 1 year later, I met the team the first time in the Lifeline office in Helsinki. We were a new VC back then, so EQT Ventures is part of EQT, which is, I think, the world's 6th largest investor. So it's massive. But on the venture side, we were kind of new. And then went and said hi to Lifeline. One of the first investments we did was in Vault, which is another company that Lifeline had invested in. And then they said, you just got to meet this team. They're called Varjo. And back then, the prototype was not really assembled. So you had to sort of see the optics in one experience, and then you had to try to sort of imagine what all these bits and pieces together would be like and work like. I love the technology, but I think it was more the team and the vision, and just realizing that this could be the breakthrough needed to really work in VR. And from my perspective, having played around with headsets from the beginning. I think first time I saw a VR headset during the Amiga days, I think it was called Dactyl Nightmare. I've had this dream of like, imagine being able to be in VR and work. And then DK1 and all those were, of course, really cool. And then for the first time, you feel that this can work. And then I think it happened pretty quickly. Got to know the team more. I started to sort of forming our views. I think one of the first question was around, so Varjo is claiming human eye resolution, and if you just draw out the line of display technology development, kind of like the Moore's law of display technology, when will that happen? And then our initial hunch was maybe a couple of years, but then when you start diving into it, you realize, wait a minute, that will take at least 10 years to happen. And then you have a team here who kind of claims to have solved it in a prototype already now, but we'll be able to have a product in the market in a couple of years. So we figure we just got to invest. But actually, already back then, what is now called the Varjo Reality Cloud was already sort of on the horizon, and it was a big part of our excitement around the case. So it's not just the hardware, but it's also software that goes with it.
And before we dive into the big announcement that you've recently done, can you give us just a couple of use cases that illustrate the efficiency and the value that Varjo brings to its clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been, of course, on the market since the beginning of 2019 with first V1, then the VR2, VR2 Pro, then the XR1, the world's first video see-through mixed reality headset. And now we recently launched the VR3 and the XR3 that are basically the pinnacles of the modern technology for VR and XR. And for these first and second generation headsets, we have been selling those to like a few hundred companies, which are like mostly the kind of companies you have in the Fortune 500. So huge enterprises, then a lot of governmental organizations, US Army, US Air Force, US Navy, many similar things in Europe, England, Germany, France, Finland, obviously. There we have basically segmented these into three segments. Training and design, the kind of like organizations. An example would be training pilots to fly, whether they're civilian or whether they're defense sector related. One of the great examples is Boeing, who has been training their astronauts how to do the ISS docking procedures with Varjo headsets. So they basically have a fully simulated version of the docking capsule, which is running in VR. They use valve index controllers in there to really trigger every single button sequence that they need to engage on. And they have been doing this in the COVID times in a way that the two astronauts who are the principal pilots, they train in different places. So they could actually be here participating in Boeing astronaut training. They're talking with each other the same way as we are. They're pressing buttons, they're engaging and synchronizing everything, but they're actually in other places of the US continent, which is pretty marvelous when you think about it. In the defense sector, what we have seen the last year is that a lot of the training has moved from training how to fly the plane or similar vehicle onto how to fly the next mission. And that means that the pilots are training every single day instead of like having a beginning and an end for like career training. Now they're doing it all the time, and VR makes that possible. Because with any other medium, you would need to have like simulation systems that cost millions of dollars that take like huge amount of space to operate, very expensive to operate as well. And that means that you can only like have so many hours for these pilots. Now with the Varjo headsets, because you see things true to life in human eye resolution, you see the avionics exactly the same way as they are actually in the real plane as well. You can really train every single thing in there. And it's a pretty huge paradigm shift in the way that people train. It just happens to be now in these very expensive things like planes, but the same thing will be applying to any kind of career training in the future. So I think that's a huge area. The second one that has been having like a huge impact for us has been the design sector. So we are working in almost all of the automotive companies in the world on their design processes, and with some even on the retail, how to do car configurators so that the customers, when they actually purchase the car, they know exactly what they're going to be getting. Polestar is one of these companies. We have a couple of others to be announced soon. But what we started with these companies has been on the design side. So you have like a couple of industrial designers who design every single detail of the cars before they start figuring out how to actually make the factory that makes that car. And in there, their like attention to detail is like impeccable. They're looking at where exactly is each stitch going to be on the car seats. And on that level, you need to have tools that help you do those decisions fast. And of course, like having human eye resolution VR lets you see all of the models like instantly when you're doing changes, discuss about those changes, and iterate much faster and make much better designs than what you could previously when you were limited by the real world things. Like you had to actually produce models that could take like days or even weeks, sometimes even months to complete. If you're on that kind of cycle, you can have only so many iterations for the whole car program. But with the virtual tools, it's instant. Now what has happened last year is that has changed in the way that all that design is done now with teams in remote places, doing all of that virtually. So similar session as we're having now, but looking at how the next car is going to look like. And they use a tool from Autodesk called VRED. Like every single car maker uses that tool, like nobody deviates. And with that one, you can have collaborative session, shared model, and you can look at the latest designs. You can look at the previous designs, cross sections on the model, discuss about the tiniest details about those cars, switch instantly the different paint jobs, the different environments, how it's going to look like. And this way, for example, Kia went from having one meeting every month between the Korean office and the Frankfurt office into having multiple meetings in a week, because they don't need to travel to meet each other anymore. They do it all the time. And they told us that this really shifted their perspective on the whole company for the design team. They don't feel that they have this Frankfurt team and the Korea team, and you're like somehow afraid of the headquarters and the decision makers there. They start feeling that they're one team, like the Korea, Frankfurt, pulling things together and really working as one team. And I think that's the kind of thing which is one of the biggest revolutions in people's lives, that you start crossing the bridge of locale. You don't need to go to the other side of the world to have a meaningful and functional meeting, and very personal meeting as well, like what we're having here today.
Great. Now, Ted, just a quick question for you as well. Urho described all of these use cases, and XR has really started to reach kind of an inflection point right now. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for startups right now in the realm of XR?
We're still in the infrastructure first applications layer, I would say, if you look at it broadly. Right now, you have telepresence apps in the market gaining traction. You have design apps on the B2B side, both as extensions to existing tools, but also new tools. But as this new paradigm is becoming proven, and both mainly companies but also consumers around the world start having access, I think it's mainly about the upside. I mean, I think soon we'll get into more the application layer of the stack, and we'll see way more innovation there. I think it's interesting things happening now with platforms, not just Varjo, but other platforms also becoming more computer-like, like introduction of multitasking and so forth. And when these innovations are being rolled out, I think people will be way more open to spending more time in these environments.
And as EQT, you also made an investment in AR as well, and the design side. Do you want to talk to that company, to Vectary?
Yeah, sure. So Vectary is a browser-based 3D modeling and rendering tool, I would say. Coming from a perspective that I would describe as kind of like a browser-based SketchUp, but now moving into way more interesting territory with collaboration, and they also have publishing for both sort of non-AR 3D models, but also AR. And I think in the world of retail, AR is becoming more and more important to try the products, see them in their right environment and context before buying. Really cool company based in Bratislava, having some really cool announcements in the second half of this year as well.
Great. And talking about announcements, we've already alluded to your move from purely hardware to the software side as well. We actually have a video that we can play in the background, and maybe Urho, you can talk us through the video and what the big announcement was about the Varjo Cloud.
Okay, so here you're basically seeing a prototype video of our new teleport functionality that we have been developing at Varjo. It's in many ways the culmination of years of work on creating the enablers that allow people to achieve teleportation for the first time in human history. In many ways, like paraphrasing Alan Kay, who said that if you're serious about software, you have to build your own hardware. And this is the kind of thing that is at the moment only possible with the Varjo's XR3 headset. And this video is showcasing the capabilities that we have on the Varjo Teleport platform. First of all, we captured this one as the whole room. So not only me, we just start in this video with just showing me, but we have captured the whole room, whole place, and we are giving on this demo, if you have it on the headset, a full feeling that you are there with me, and we can have a completely natural discussion, and I'm true to life. And what we're ourselves seeing that this is an extension of the metaverse into the real world, so that you're at any point of time able to have a link to, for example, your factory in a faraway country and be there yourself, or have your expert join in when there is an issue at hand, see it as if they were actually there themselves. If there is a conveyor problem, they can see the conveyor moving, they can see all of the things happening there, and of course issue the problem instantly. And instead of needing to arrange travel and maybe be under quarantine for a couple of weeks, and subsequently be able to really tackle the issue in weeks' time, you can instead just directly teleport there, sense the whole thing as if you were actually there yourself, fix it, work it, collaborate. And we do believe that this is in many ways like the next form of human communication, like looking into what you had with the telephony, only audio, only voice. It's great, you can pass the message effectively in there and have a great conversation. Then going into the Zoom time that we are all so happy exists in this COVID time, but at the same time it's very fatiguing, and it really doesn't have the human element that much. It's all about looking at PowerPoints and looking at Excel sheets and talking only about like pre-planned things, and not nearly as natural as if we were sitting in a boardroom and discussing more frankly about things. And I do believe that, for example, this is much more direct and engaging session that we could have in Zoom, for example. But now, ability to really be there on the other place is the revolution that we're actively now pursuing with the Varjo Reality Cloud and with the teleportation technology. We're not stopping this in the business domain. So business sphere has plenty of use cases for it, and could go on about endlessly about those, but it's the same for personal sphere. So looking into visiting your relatives, especially in the time of COVID, difficult, time consuming. and you very easily lose touch what's happening in their lives because you're at best having phone conversations that last 15 minutes, and you never see your relatives' homes, and you don't see what's actually happening in there. So we see that when you actually can teleport, it's going to be equally impacting into the private sphere of our lives as well, and looking into what that can actually achieve and for the whole humanity is like a very rewarding thought for me.
And Uhro, can you talk us through, maybe we've seen the video, just at a very high level, how is the tech working there? So I'm wearing the Varjo headset. I have these front-facing cameras, presumably with LiDAR or some sort of depth sensing. Can you just explain to the audience at a very high level how that all fits together and how Varjo is powering that?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, this is prototype. We are all about shipping only things that are like of the utmost possible quality. But you need to understand that we're not talking about this vision in the way that it's something that we feel is going to be far away. This has been done with the single XR3 at the place next to our office. We had one of our devs put it on, look around the room one time, and then that creates a full 3D model of the place. Very robust, super fast and easy. And then he started staring into the corner that you see in there. And then I just walked in front of this headset. The headset captures both the video and the 3D changes of the world in real time. Now, what we're then able to do is that we can transport those to other places and play it back. And it created a volumetric capture that feels totally real. It's not on the resolution level that we want it to be. It has issues like when you're looking at this album cover, it's like bleeding at the edges and many things that we want to improve. But when you put this on, you get the sense that, yes, this is the vision. This is what is going to transfer the world and make such a huge change. We also announced that we are starting the alpha phase of this one in third quarter this year. So we're relatively close on the maturity of the overall platform at the moment.
Yeah, got it. And it's so good to see so much innovation and people really kind of pushing the boundaries of what this technology can do. And you mentioned a word earlier, you talked about the metaverse. Ted, I'm curious to know, do you have any thoughts on that? When a lot of investors, but also founders talk about this concept and that's kind of increased this year, how do you think about that term? What does it mean? And are you seeing any startups who are approaching that space?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's, from one perspective, it's nothing new, but it's like a new label on a bunch of different things. I mean, you hear it being used in multi-platform gaming. There's a movement, obviously, in the crypto space where you buy land using various types of NFTs. You hear about it in communication software, and obviously some of those being enabled by both VR and AR and mixed reality, and then also kind of like in mapping or in sort of GIS or like those types of applications. So it's a pretty broad term. I think it gained popularity, at least from an investor perspective, after seeing, I think first people started to think about what is, for instance, Fortnite really, and sort of living in a parallel universe almost. I think that was one of the first perspectives. But then also seeing software like Rec Room getting big financing rounds and sort of open world gaming coming out. So I think it's very conceptually very interesting, and see a lot of founders coming into this space that previously might have founded companies in completely different areas. So it feels like there is kind of like a wave coming, and very interesting to see where this will lead.
Urho, what about you? Outside of Varjo, is there some areas that are really interesting, or startups that are working on the future of computing that you've seen who are super interesting?
First, of course, for example, virtual desktop has been like a one of the really revolutionary things for the Oculus ecosystem. That has been super interesting to see. I see more and more startups solving the way that we would be able to have meaningful haptics, meaningful accuracy of interaction overall. That cannot be only done with controllers, for example, that I have at the moment in my hands here. So things that make it feel so that the metaverse feel more real, and like headsets that create the illusion of the other world, of the view, and of course the sounds as well, sight and sounds, is just like a one layer. You need to have that like a interaction layer overall. How do you engage on that one? How do you have agency? And then of course coming next, how does the world impact you in other ways? So can you have haptical feeling of the world as well? So I see that more and more companies start to existing in that domain. And one of the interesting was of course the acquisition of Control Labs by Facebook. I was discussing with the guys quite a bit before that one, and I do feel that they are into something super interesting overall. And then the activities related to like metaverse in the like a business sphere, like what NVIDIA is doing with Omniverse, like super interesting about how do you like digitize and link up all the digital assets of the company into like a one continuum of development. And they're of course relying a lot into the like shoulders of Pixar, who did the USB-C that is enabling these kind of like fluid connections between 3D models into the like play modeling tools, into the texturing tools, into the like Photoshop and all that, just like having all of those simultaneously into one single repository for thousands of artists or whatever happens to be the nick of the day for any particular company. I think that's like the business side of this metaverse thinking, and it's, well, NVIDIA calls it Omniverse. It's like a bigger movement that I do label into the metaverse side.
Yeah, and can you talk a bit more about the recent acquisition? So as part of the recent announcement, you mentioned that you've now bought Dimension 10. They're folding into the team. Yeah, tell us a bit more about Dimension 10 and what's the future for them now that they've come under the fold of Varjo.
Yeah, of course. So like I met Chris, who's one of the founders of Dimension 10, like 2 years ago, something like that. And we had like the first session in the Dimension 10. And for those who don't know, Dimension 10 is a Norwegian company. They do collaboration tool like this Engage, but focus purely on the AEC sector, which is architecture, engineering, and construction. Their per seat license is $3,000 per year per seat, which is like a pretty hefty. But they really have been focusing on how they create value into that particular sector that is really adding so much efficiency into the design process of the whole sector that people are willing to pay that kind of money. So what that means is that this team has really had attention to detail and solved the problems to perfection related to collaboration in AEC market. So how we saw it when we started seeing that this Varjo Reality Cloud is actually now going into high gear. This was around a year ago. We had solved some of the fundamental problems on the cloud transport, rendering content on the cloud, sending it to the headset with like a minimal latency in absolutely pure quality. And then the XR3 had for the first time come about that we saw that yes, we actually get that leap in quality from the previous gens that we hoped. And now we need to start looking into the future. So then we start thinking, how do we accelerate this development? Do we start building new teams who start learning what it means to collaborate in VR? And we start thinking that if we do that, it's going to be years until like a first meaningful prototypes actually exist, and then years until we have something productized ready. So from that moment on, we start looking into how can we accelerate this non-organically. which is in many ways what bigger corporations typically solve their problems. If we can buy the solution, then let's buy the solution and be done with it. As a startup, you typically cannot do that one, but we happen to have like a really great sync with the team when we met these guys, and we started like almost out of the box, like entertaining this idea that what if we would actually become like a singular team, and how that would be making it so that the future of human communication happens like a couple of years faster than otherwise. And we are like closing the deal just a few months later. So that has been absolutely stellar process so far.
Ted, you alluded to like when you met the team back in 2018 that you already saw this bigger vision of the Varjo Reality Cloud as well. So just curious to see your reflections now that it's out there versus when you first heard it. How does that play out in your view?
I was thinking about like revisiting the old decks with this announcement, but the way I remember it, it was part of the original vision. And to be honest, there were more components to the original vision that have not been announced yet. So there's more cool stuff to come from Uhro and team. I mean, Varjo showcased infinite desktop and really cool stuff like that a couple of years ago. But I think this is when it's happening for real with the Reality Cloud. It's not just a desktop in VR XR. It's a real deal. So looking forward to that.
You already referenced Rec Room, but Rec Room is the perfect example of how you start building something in VR and really exploit the magic that you have in VR and creating in VR, but then the true growth and having them as a true first unicorn in VR grew from being able to scale that to multiple platforms.
Really, really cool.
Cool. Okay, so I'm conscious of time. I think we should start wrapping up. So Ted, maybe you can just wrap up by telling any founders in the audience, how can they reach you? What kind of stage of company is EQT looking at? So
how do people reach me? Ted@eqtventures.com. So pretty simple. Stages, our sweet spot is A rounds and B rounds on the venture side, and then there's a growth initiative as well, doing C rounds and onwards. But we do occasional seed investing as well, even though it's not our core focus.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we were going to end with Uhro telling people where people can find out more about Varjo. I'm assuming that he's had the battery has run out on his headset, maybe. Which is...
Most likely. I guess it's Varjo.com. Varjo.com, and also search for Varjo Reality Cloud. There's a lot of media about it. Read a couple of cool articles, and there's a great announcement video that I think is worth looking at.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's wrap up. Thanks for everyone that tuned in. This has been a really great episode. We have some more coming up, some more that are already recorded that are coming out as well. So stay tuned to Viewpoints. And I just want to thank my co-host Petri and also to Ted from EQT and Uhro from Varjo for joining us in such a wonderful setting. So till next time, goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Uhro.
Cheers. Bye-bye.